Hi, what's up? So I'm posting this because this week I subscribed to this new channel by this beautiful lady called Marintia Eiko. And as you can tell, that is a Japanese name. And the video itself inspired me because this lady has a Ghanaian father and a Japanese mother. And she grew up in Japan. But she even speaks a Ghanaian language. So apparently the father taught her his local language from Ghana. And in the video, they were going to visit their folks in Ghana. But the thing that inspired me was that this lady, in all her videos, keeps considering or referring to herself as a black woman. She keeps saying that she's black and she considers or identifies as a black person. And it was interesting to see because the same week, I had received two comments from two Brazilians and they were insulting me, but I want to go into details. But the reason they commented on a video that I made of the largest black populations outside Africa, or the countries with the largest African populations outside Africa, and Brazil alongside the United States were those countries with the largest population. But according to these Brazilians, they say that the data I had for Brazil was wrong and that my channel is fake news and so on and so on. And I even checked one of them, went to his profile and followed him to see his social medias and found that he's a mixed race Brazilian, a black mixed race kind of. So I did a little bit of research and digging and discovered some discrepancy that has been engineered and designed in Brazil by the Brazil Institute of Geography and Statistics, basically a department for identifying and classifying people in Brazil. And they confuse people, and I think this is what is in their educational curriculum, where they confuse people or young people in Brazil about ethnicity and racial identity. So in Brazil, they have this term called pardo, which is basically a complex term that means mixed race. And basically what it means is that if you are black and white, you are a pardo. If you are white and Japanese, you are pardo. If you are white with native Indian, you are pardo. If you are mixed, you have mixed ancestry, you belong to a group called pardo. Then they also have other groups. Branco refers to white people. Preto refers to black or Africans. Then they have other terms like indigena, meaning indigenous people of Brazil. And the largest group in Brazil, making up about 75%, is the pardo, of course, the mixed people. And now this gives them the reason to classify black people or Africans in Brazil as just 16 million. And they also go ahead to say that the blacks or the Africans are only those found in hinterland or villages or rural areas, normally called the Quilambos, which were settlements by African slaves. They fail to recognize that there are a large population of black people in cities. For example, in the city of Bahia, Bahia, Salvador Bahia, where most blacks are found, they say that only 20% of people in Salvador Bahia are blacks or the pretos. And then they go ahead to say that now the 62% of black people from there are pardos or the mixed race. So this is how the Brazilian government and the Brazilian system classifies blacks, by separating mixed blacks or people who we would supposedly call blacks in the other parts of the world as pardos, and then retaining those who look 100% Africans. For example, look at this photo here. So in this photo, you can see this an extended mixed family. The grandfather and the grandmother are obviously blacks, and they have sons, as you can see in this photo. And the sons have their wives in front of each son. You can see there's a wife. And then down there, you can see the grandkids, those boys. And there's even a boy on the top right on that photo. So these grandkids in Brazil, they would be classified as different races. So the more light-skinned boy, he would be white, for example. And then the top right boy, you can see in this photo, he would be black or African, even though these are cousins who share the same grandfather and grandmother. So that's how the system in Brazil works. So it means Barack Obama, for example, who identifies as black, though we know his mother, Anne, was white, yes. But there's no time I do recall Barack Obama calling himself white. He always said he's a black president. Of course, he meant he's a mixed race, black and white, but he identified as a black person, either way. There's now someone like Lewis Hamilton. This guy, his mother Carmen, is white, and his father is obviously black from Grenada, the island in the Caribbean. But he mostly identifies himself as a black man. And you can go to his Instagram. Recently he was in Africa, in Kenya, and he spent a week with this tribe in Kenya called the Pokot people. And Lewis kept saying that he has never felt more at home any other place away from his home. He said that among these people he felt that they were his family. That's what he said on his Instagram. So this guy kind of identifies himself as a black man. He even says that when he was in Africa, he felt so close to his ancestors in another post. Another person who identifies as a black person, though he's a mixed race, I can go on and on. For example, the tennis star Naomi Osaka. You go to her Instagram or even go to YouTube, there's that interview she gave where she was, I think, with Ellen DeGeneres, or she was on that show, and she kept saying that she usually identifies herself as a black woman and she supports Black Lives Matter. And she goes ahead now on like Instagram, she has this book. She published a book for kids and it's titled The Way Champs Play. And on the cover of that book, there's this black girl with a tennis racket. And Naomi usually says that's her. And she wants most kids or who look up to her as a role model to read that book and see that she's a black kid, because that's how she identifies herself as a black kid, even though she grew up in Japan with her mother Tamaki Osaka, but she had a black father, Leonard Francois. So that's how it is. Outside here, most kids born to black and mixed race basically parents end up identifying themselves as blacks. And even most countries, if you have a single drop of blood from a black ancestor, you end up being classified as a black person. That's how it works. That's how it works in Africa. That's how it works in the United States, in Europe. But in Brazil, because of this discrepancy, the Pardos end up not being classified as blacks. And the Pardo, remember, these are mixed black with another race. And this is a system to be used to oppress these Brazilians. For example, if you have ever watched that movie called The City of God, you remember that movie that came out in 1998, and there was these young guys with the guns, and I think if you've never watched that movie, go look it up. It's a nice movie. But what I want to highlight in that movie is that in the 70s, the Brazilian government was constructing these projects, informal or rather formal projects, and there was these tiny houses they were constructing to resettle homeless, mostly black and mixed race people. And it's this project that later grew to consist permanent and semi-permanent structures and became slums, and today they are called favelas in Brazil. And Brazil, the cities in Brazil like Brasilia, they have so many of these slums called the favelas, and that's where you find most black people. That's why you find most pardos or mixed with black and other race people living there. And there the government doesn't care. It doesn't provide basic services, medical, education for the kids in those slums. But when it comes to voting, the Brazilians are divided, because now the blacks are told you are just 16 million. The other blacks are told you are part of this group called the Pardo, so vote for a white guy. And now they end up with a racist, right-wing president like Bolsonaro, A guy who doesn't care about black people and mixed race people. You can go back and see what Bolsonaro kept saying about these people. He kept saying that the army should operate inside those favelas and shoot to kill when they see any black or mixed race person. That's what he said. It's not me who is saying that. That's what he said. So, but if black people in Brazil, including those they are calling the pardos, would know that they are black and come together, they would vote for all the leaders in Brazil being black or mixed race black. Then they would have people who really care about their problems. Because Brazil is a rich country. It has a GDP that's among the top 15 richest countries in the world, and it has a small population of just 200 million people. So basically, Brazil should have, or people in Brazil should be richer than they are today. But because of that, because of the division, the majority of people in Brazil who are black, and some of them do not consider themselves as black, are divided, and they end up voting in the same racist, the same corrupt leaders, recycling the same people. This current president who won an election just the other day, I think he's called Lula. This guy was jailed for 5 years because of corruption.